Welcome to This Explainer. Today we are unpacking a major paradigm shift in how you view product building, directly drawn from some incredible insights by the Specky blog. Look, if you've ever felt like you're just launching feature after feature but barely moving the needle on user engagement or sales, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to dive right into this framework. It's called Jobs to be Done. And trust me, it is going to completely change the way you think about discovery, prioritization, and messaging.
So let me ask you something, and I want you to be brutally honest here. Do your customers actually want your product? I mean, we spend thousands of hours debating UI tweaks, roadmap priorities, and feature sets, all built on this underlying assumption that our customers wake up in the morning deeply desiring the software or physical goods we create. But what if that foundational assumption is just completely wrong?
Well, the uncomfortable truth is blunt, but it is absolutely essential to hear. No, they do not want your product. They literally never have. What they actually want is to get a specific job done. Your product is really just a temporary candidate that they've brought in to accomplish a result. They don't care about your beautifully written code. They don't care about your expansive feature lists. The moment something else comes along that does that specific job better, faster, or cheaper, they're going to drop your product without a second thought.
Which brings us to Section 1, You're hired or fired.
To really wrap our heads around this framework, we have to completely move away from terms like users or retention and start talking about hiring and firing. This framing comes from the legendary work of Clayton Christensen. You might know him from his famous milkshake study, along with Tony Ulwick. The core idea here is that people don't buy products. They hire them to make progress in a specific situation. When you adopt this mindset, you realize your product is essentially going through a daily job interview. The customer is the hiring manager. They have a problem to solve, and your product is just sitting in the interview chair hoping to get the gig.
To make this incredibly concrete, think about this classic analogy. Nobody walks into a hardware store because they have a deep, burning desire to own a quarter-inch drill. What they actually want is a quarter-inch hole. And frankly, even that doesn't go quite far enough, does it? What they really want is the sturdy shelf that the hole allows them to hang, so they can finally organize their books and look super smart on their Zoom calls. The drill is just the tool hired for the job. Once you understand the difference between the tool you build and the ultimate outcome the customer actually desires, literally everything changes.
Now, when you start viewing your product as a hired candidate, it completely explodes your view of who your competition actually is. You aren't just competing against direct software rivals in your category. No way. You are competing against Microsoft Excel. You are competing against the messy status quo. You're often competing against the customers simply shrugging their shoulders and doing absolutely nothing. If your product doesn't clearly win the interview against all of those alternatives, well, you simply won't get hired.
Okay, let's move into Section 2, the 3 dimensions of every job.
So, we know we're being hired to do a job, but what exactly is a job? Well, it turns out a job is practically never purely functional. Take a tax app, for example. The functional layer is pretty obvious, right? It's the practical task of filing taxes accurately. That's what most feature requests address. But you have to look deeper. The emotional layer is how the person actually wants to feel. They're thinking, I don't want to feel anxious about getting audited. And then there's the social layer, which is how they want to be perceived by others. I want to be seen as a responsible adult who really has their finances together. So here is the crucial point. If you miss the emotional and social layers, you are going to end up building a technically correct product that absolutely nobody loves.
Let's dive into Section 3, Why Jobs Beat Personas.
This brings us to a pretty major clash of methodologies. For years and years, we've relied on user personas to guide our development. But when we contrast the two directly, the flaw in personas becomes glaringly obvious. Think about it. Personas describe who the customer is, their age, their job title, maybe they like hiking. But jobs describe what they're actually trying to accomplish. Anchoring your product strategy to a demographic doesn't tell you anything about why they buy. Anchoring to their intent, their job to be done, is vastly more actionable because it grounds your discovery, it makes prioritization way clearer, and honestly, it means your marketing messaging practically writes itself.
And here is the ultimate superpower of the jobs framework: extreme stability. Consider the job of sending money to family abroad. That human intent is highly, highly stable. That single job has outlived physical cash shipments, it outlived traditional wire transfers, and it is currently outliving 3 entire generations of fintech apps. Solutions constantly change, technology rapidly evolves, but the job itself remains completely stable. If you anchor to the job, your foundation doesn't shake every single time a new tech trend arrives.
All right, let's get practical with Section 4, How to Actually Find the Job.
So how do you actually find out what jobs your customers are hiring you for?
Well, the biggest mistake teams make is trying to find these answers in a multiple-choice survey. I'm sorry, but you simply cannot uncover deep emotional and social jobs through a Likert scale. You find them in stories. You literally have to get your customers on a call and interview them about the exact narrative of the last time they switched to or away from a product. You need to play the role of an investigator.
During that interview, you are trying to meticulously reconstruct this specific timeline. First, you want to know about the first thought, that exact moment the idea of a change even entered their mind. Then, the trigger, the actual event that pushed them over the edge. You want to hear all about the alternatives they tried and discarded. And finally, the exact context surrounding the switch. By mapping this all out, you get the full, unvarnished context of their struggle.
And while they're telling you this story, what you are actually listening for are these 4 specific forces. You have the push of how bad their current situation is. You have the pull of how great your new solution promises to be. But fighting against those are the anxiety of making a change and the deep ingrained habit of their old way of doing things. The true job, the real reason they're going to hire or fire you, is always hiding right in the middle of this tension.
Which leads us to our final section. Section 5. Keeping the evidence alive.
Let's say you do this perfectly and you find the job. You run the interviews, map the timeline, identify the 4 forces, and you uncover these brilliant insights. Unfortunately, there is a fatal flaw in this process that kills the momentum for almost every single team out there. We call it the trap. And this breaks my heart every time I see it. Teams take all those brilliant insights and they bury those jobs in a static workshop slide deck that is completely stale by the second quarter. A job map is absolutely useless if it doesn't stay connected to the actual signals that proved it in the first place. It needs to continually update as you learn more. It cannot just be an artifact collecting virtual dust.
To close this gap, the source material introduces Specky as an AI-native product development environment that prevents this trap entirely. It takes all your scattered signals, your user interviews, your support tickets, your sales calls, and turns them into a beautifully connected product graph. This means the jobs you uncover stay constantly linked to the real-world evidence behind them. Instead of digging through old presentations, the customer's true job automatically resurfaces exactly when you are making those critical roadmap decisions. It becomes a living, breathing input to your daily work.
I want to leave you with this final, vital question to reflect on. Go look at your roadmap right now. Look at what your team is shipping this week. Are you just building features hoping someone might want them? Or are you deliberately fulfilling specific, deeply rooted jobs for your customers? Stop building features, start fulfilling jobs, and you might just find your product is exactly what they want to hire. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I seriously can't wait to see how you apply this framework.